Everyone, Mike Grabham here again today. We are here in cloudy Seattle, Washington. So hey, welcome to the live show. We are all about helping startups in their journey. So again, my name is Mike Grabham, and what I do is I help inventors and founders basically validate their idea, refine their idea, and find a target customer who actually gets the money. So that's what I do. And in that process, I learn a lot. And I've been around a while, started 6 companies and done all the crazy stuff that entrepreneurs do. So, hey, today I want to talk about employees. You know, I talked about the Inc. magazine. They do a big survey every year. And part of that survey is to talking about the employees of all these companies. And that survey, Inc. magazine, this magazine right here, this little baby right here, that magazine, that is all about, right, the data of 5,000 companies. It's the Inc. 500, but they do a survey of 5,000 companies. So what I want to talk to you about is that what's in that survey. It's some really interesting data points about talking about the employees and how they handle employees and how the issues they're having with employees. So I want to go through that today, give you some tips on how to help hire, help find people, and some tactical things, but also some strategic things to do in your company so you can actually attract great people, because that would be the key, right? 1 second, let me get my mouse in here so I can change the get my post. There we go. So I can see comments. I'm making sure I can see the comments. That's why I'm holding on here for a second. Okay, so so let me talk about, okay, so 35% of, gotta get my glasses. So for those of you who don't know me, yeah, I wear glasses. I can't read magazine script without glasses. I can read print fine, but I can't read like magazines and newspapers without glasses. So hey, so really what we're worried about here is let me get that open. So yeah, so what we're talking about here is that 35% of all of the respondents said that the number one thing, right? The number one thing for attracting talent was just matching applicants to culture. And that shouldn't be a surprise with anyone, because honestly, culture is always the most important thing. I mean, you don't hire for, there's definitely a debate about this, but in my opinion, you don't hire for skill, you hire for culture. And the skill has to fit. So culture is always number one, and especially in smaller companies, because let's just think about this. So if you have 20 people in your company and you hire one person, that's a fifth of your company, or excuse me, that's 5% of your company, right? You're hiring one person. So that person can have a lot of effect on your organization, and it's actually have a exponential effect if they're negative. If they're a negative kind of influence in that company. So it is super critical, matching culture first and then skill set. So again, there's a lot of debate around that, and I'm happy to debate that. But in my belief, you hire for culture and you help train, skill, do all those things to level them up on the skill side. So and again, I'm looking at these stats from Inc. magazine, and they're saying, hey, 35% of the people are saying that is the problem. I got to find people that fit in my culture. Can't disagree at all. And then the second thing, the big challenge for them is 30% of them lack the experience. So there's where skills we're talking about, right? So they're hiring for culture, and then they're finding the fit for the skills. So that is tough to find that perfect match. But again, smaller companies, you have to worry about culture. Larger companies, you can get away with it. If you have 100 people in your company and you hire a person, that's 1%, like 1% of the company. So it's really hard for that person to really influence, the whole organization, unless they're obviously at the top, and that's a bad thing. So yeah. So again, find for culture first, then look for skill sets, and the data points are saying the same thing. That's what most CEOs are saying. So the one other thing is 59%. I'm just going to read this. 59% of the CEOs said that finding and retaining good staff is one of the biggest obstacles in companies' growth. That shouldn't be a surprise, right? Almost 60%, 59% say finding people is the hardest thing in growth. That is absolutely no surprise. I mean, again, this is the large data sets, 5,000 people, 5,000 companies. So it has a lot of meaning. So understand that when you're growing and you're in your process, whether you're starting a company or you've already got a company, that you got to make employee retention and report employee outreach as a priority, right? It has to be a priority. Here's another thing I thought really was great, was talking about the benefits they offer, right? What are all these, what are all these Inc. Best companies in the U.S. What do they offer for employee benefits? Well, 67% offer work from home. Not a surprise. That's a huge trend. That's going to continue where, we work remotely. I was at Startup Grind on Tuesday night, and, I met a guy there who was a COO. They had a what was it, 55 person company, completely virtual, no office whatsoever. And they actually had that company for 6 years, and they sold it just recently. So, so successfully grew the company and did everything. No, never had an office. So that is not unusual to see that, 2/3 of all companies are now offering that as a benefit, right? Remote working. And one of the second things is free food in office, which is interesting because now they're saying, okay, in the office, you're going to give you free food and in office perks, like maybe picking up your dry cleaning and things like that. So, those are, again, almost 2/3, 65%. As using that as another. And the third most popular employee benefit is just a 401k match. That's great if you have an existing company. Again, that's 61%. So, almost 2/3, but 60% of the companies have a 401k match. Usually that's around a company that has they're a little larger, they're a little more mature, and they're able to do that because the ability to manage a 401k used to be kind of cumbersome, lots of paperwork, but now there's companies that do all that for you at a very reasonable price. So it does make a lot of sense for the smaller companies, say 50 to 500 people. You probably should have a 401k, right? Now, if you don't want to do that, or you want to do stock options, and we're talking to startup founders, right? The startups, the less than 2 years old kind of companies. Now they're almost always using stock options, right? So stock options, here's a couple, hints and clues about stock options. Me being a startup guy, I always offered I've always offered stock options in all of my companies, right? So here's some kind of things that, they're kind of tricks you should basically follow so you don't kind of shoot yourself in the foot. You should always have a vesting schedule. You should never just give shares to someone. You should never do that. That's just a never do that. So it's always have a vesting schedule. Most people have a cliff, and why the cliff is called, you'll hear this, because here's what's kind of normal today. It's a 4-year vesting schedule with either a 6-month or 1-year cliff. So what that means is, for you vest, say you get 10,000 options, right? So of those 10,000, you're going to vest those over a 4-year period. Now, the first year, that's 2,500 options, right? Because there's 10,000 divided by 4, 2,500 options. And the 6-month cliff is you don't get any of those options until after 6th month, right? So the 6th month, you're going to get basically half. So 1,250 of those options you're going to get awarded on that, on that cliff, right? So that's what they call a 6-month cliff. Some have a year cliff, but many times it's a 6-month cliff, right? 4-year vesting, 6-month or 1-year cliff. So I would highly recommend doing that with options, because you do not want to give away options without some, you want to see some track record for someone, because you don't want somebody to come in, you award them options within a month and they leave. It's just not good for anyone. So always have a cliff. It's normally built into your options agreement, which is, created by, normally by an attorney. So that option agreement, again, is very simple. So those are the things that, the benefits that people are offering. So I'm just going to buzz through those real quick. Remember, this is from the Inc. magazine, right? Their survey they do every year, which I love. And they're talking about how do we keep employees, right? And they asked the 5,000 companies, what was their top things that they offered as employee benefits. One was working remotely, 2/3 of them do that. Free food or in-office perks. almost 2/3, 65%. And the next was 401k match, which is 60%, right? And then a couple other things here in the kind of towards the end is educational stipends, which, they'll give you $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 to spend on education. And last was extended paid maternity leave, which is becoming extremely popular, both from a male and female standpoint. And that was 29%. And then I basically talked about for startups, obviously they talk a lot about options and stock options. So that's what I just talked about there. What also, of course, probably no surprise is, we got to talk about diversity and especially, leveling up women pay and equal pay for women. So in case you're joining me just now, Mike Grabham here. I'm your startup guide. I help people launch ideas and create income generating businesses. So today we're talking about the Inc. magazine 5,000 survey. They do it every year. Tons of great data. And right now I want to talk about diversity. And of course, having equal pay for women is a big deal. I mean, like big stats that you probably see all the time. 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. So there is a huge gap there, right? But when we look at these 5,000 companies, and again, these are normally smaller or definitely companies than Fortune 500 and the Inc. 5,000, because these are fast-growing startups, right? Or fast-growing companies that, to do that, 65% are saying they have some kind of equal pay policy. I mean, I bet 5 years ago that was like 1%. I mean, I bet it was hardly any 5 years ago. So now it's a true thing, which is great. It should be a thing. And basically 2/3 of all companies now have a policy about having equal pay. Because here's another stat that women make 85 cents for every dollar earned, according to a Pew study. That's PEW. So that is, that's obviously changing, which is great. So we have to keep talking about this. So it does change. So give me a thumbs up. Let me know what's going on out there. If it's your first time watching a live event on LinkedIn or even YouTube, shoot me a thumbs up. Go ahead and ask any questions you have. I got a statement down here. I've got how do you start? How to start a new business. I'll have to answer that directly. So we're talking about Inc. magazine and the data points they have to share today, and it's all about around employees and finding employees, right? I'm going to talk some about like some tactical things you can do to find employees, attract employees. So it's around culture, obviously, is important, as it is pointed out that 60% of all people are having a problem finding them, but 35% saying culture is the biggest thing. So here's the thing: when hiring people, don't hire your friends and relatives. It sounds kind of stupid, right? But it happens all the time, and especially in younger companies. But we hire, relatives, or maybe maybe they're second cousins or something, but they're still relatives. So here's the thing that I've found with hiring relatives, and you're normally not good. Or friends. When I say relatives, friends and relatives, people that are close to you that already know you before you operate the business. So here's some things that happen when you hire friends. One is they feel entitled, right? And I think it's just human nature. It's not that they're bad people. It's just they have, when they know you, they have a different level of thought about you. They don't think of you as a boss. They definitely don't think of you probably as a mentor. All those things that you may be for someone in your company. They don't have that thought process. So friends and relatives is really hard. I just don't recommend it. I mean, it does work. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It will work and has worked, and it will continue to work for some people. It's just I wouldn't rely on it as a way to recruit. I wouldn't look at my friends and say I want to hire my friends, because one, there's no diversity there, but two, it creates a very kind of cliquish organization. So that's my thoughts on hiring friends and relatives. Just don't do it. Avoid it at all costs. I understand sometimes maybe you need it for a short term as a temporary. That's different, right? I'm talking about full-time employment. And then here's a way that I think that most people try to, but I don't think they do a good job of it. And that's utilizing your current employees to get referrals and to find people and recruit people for you, right? So here's the thing. If you have a great culture in your company, you have great leaders, you have you're open, you give a lot of autonomy, you allow people to do their thing, and they're successful, and you let them know they're doing great. I mean, if that kind of culture is happening where you have open communication, all those things, your people will want to share it with others, and they're going to want to attract other people. Like, come on. I mean, that's really how it works, right? But if so you have to put some effort into creating a great culture, right? So if you create a great culture, these employees are like, they're going to naturally go out and want to find friends or friends of friends and scream about how much they love working at your place. So here's a perfect example, right? When a company gets put on the list, like best places to work list, right? I mean, they're all over. You have to submit your company to those. Those are something that you have to submit to, but those are hugely valuable. I mean, super valuable, because what it does, it puts you on the map, right? So especially in a smallish city, when you're not, when you're not one of the top, 25, 40 cities in the US, if you're Indianapolis, which is an awesome city, I mean, it's not huge, but if you're on the list of best places to work in Indianapolis, people are going to know that. They're going to like, holy crap, that's a great company. They're one of the best places to work in Indianapolis, right? So you have to make an effort to be that. So one is, what I say is make sure you go out and do outreach to those organizations that do those lists. Like that's used like the Chamber of Commerce, some local magazine, the Business Journal, things like that. They're always doing those lists, but I would make an effort to be on those lists, because they're not going to seek you out. You have to go outreach to them. So that's one thing is how to create internal referrals, is just have a great company organization internally, and people will go find other people. Now, the one caveat I kind of warn people on when you're having your internal employees go out and bring their friends in, is because the lack of diversity that usually happens there, right? Because friends are like each other, right? So there's not a great diversity. So I always warn people, like if you hire, if your friends are bringing their friends in as employees, you're probably not getting great diversity. It's just probably not happening, right? So make sure you keep an eye on the diversity of your people, and it may be geographic diversity. It may be, of course, it could be gender diversity. Always, that's a number one. But there's lots of things of diversity: economic status diversity, background diversity. There's lots of things, right? I mean, culture, of course, diversity. I mean, those things you really need to build a great company. What I would recommend, and I don't care how large it is, whether it's 5-person, 50-person, 100-person, I would highly recommend having someone in charge of diversity and culture. Now, I'm not saying they need the title of saying Chief Diversity Officer or Chief Culture Officer. I'm not saying that, but there should be someone on your team, and normally it's HR related, but it doesn't have to be, that is keeping an eye and moving forward culture and diversity in your organization. You need that person. You need somebody that keeps an eye on it. It might be the CEO, which is fine, but there needs to be somebody that keeps their eye on the prize in regards to diversity and just keeping the culture in a positive light. Now, the CEO normally is kind of keeping should keep their nose and their ear to the ground to make sure things are going well culturally. But sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes they may have a co-founder that is great at that. But again, assign someone that their task is to keep tabs on diversity and culture in your organization. I don't care if it's 5 people or 500 people. Just appoint someone. And if you want to give them the title, give them the title. So, one thing that I think is great for organizations is finding younger talent. And it doesn't have to be an intern. Interns are great. I mean, they're awesome. I love interns. I mean, I've always loved working with interns because they bring a very different perspective to what's going on, right? I love interns because they have no baggage. Like you and I mean, if you're older, I have baggage, right? I've got all these things that I've done, and I have just idiosyncrasy about the way I think and the things that I think are true and not true. And I have all this baggage, right? But a 22-year-old person out of college doesn't have that baggage. They have wide open, they have different viewpoints, they've had different backgrounds, they grew up completely digital. I mean, these guys have just a great sense of one, digital, but they have just a great sense of new and just open up doors. So allow them to kind of bring up ideas and share thoughts and just you kind of think out loud. I mean, interns are awesome for that. But what I'm saying is when I say hire young, it doesn't have to be an intern, but hire a 23-year-old person to come in and do something and be part of your team. I mean, you'll be surprised at the viewpoints they bring. It's very unique, and it keeps the diversity going, right? Age diversity is just as important as the other diversity I already mentioned, right? So you got to have them, right? So, hey, today we're talking about finding employees. I talk about the Inc. Magazine 500, which is a big survey they do every year on Inc. Magazine. And I went and talked about what the CEOs are saying, and they're saying that culture is the main thing, right? The challenge when they're finding employees is having a good cultural fit. And second is the skill, right? It's not the first, it's the second thing. So what I'm talking about is some things that we can do to find employees today. So give me a thumbs up. Let me know what's going on out there. Again, Mike Grabham here today, but we have about another 5-10 minutes left, and we'll go through a couple more things here. So as I said, you have to make culture important. And I'm talking about bringing new young people into the organization, right? So here's a great website. It's called GenM Co. So it's GenM, M as in Mike, .co. And what it does is basically they do training for interns, and then they, then you hire them out on a subscription basis, which I think is really cool. And it's not only just young. Sometimes it's people basically changing careers. So they're looking for internships to just get experience. But yeah, so it's a great. I just discovered them and had a conversation with them this week, talking about how the system works. But it's really simple. It's basically they have a subscription model. You pay it. It's $150 for the first 3 months, and then you have access to an intern, right? And you work with one person, and they give you a certain number of hours a week. I think it's 10 hours a week, but it's great service. And I make no money off that stuff. It's just stuff I find that I think is cool. So again, one of the things I think is important for any organization is seek out the awards of being best places to work at. Many companies and CEOs don't think that's important because they've always either, if it's their first time, they haven't had experience of how hard it is to find great people, so they may not know that. But if you can get on that list of great places to work, and especially in a smallish town, when I'm talking about the non-NFL cities, the bigger cities, like if you're in a smaller area, I mean, being on that list is going to be huge because people are going to know about you, they're going to read about you, and they're going to apply to work at you because they want to work at great places. And so that to me is the key. If in a smaller area is getting on that list and making sure your culture is something that people want to work at. I mean, that's it, right? It is totally it. If you have a great culture and people know you have a great culture and your employees talk about your culture and how great it is to work there, you're going to have an opportunity to get other great people. And just keep in mind the diversity of people and not just hire all of the same people, like friends of the people who work there, because they'll bring in their friends, but make sure there's a diversity of those people, age, gender, culture, background, all those things will just make you a better company. So that's all I got today. I will be back on Tuesday. So thanks for joining me. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know what's going on out there and take care. I'll see you next week. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.